Well, before I do anything else, I just have sort of in appreciation for the support. I want to thank Ron, Mary Jo, Liz, Anakin, and Jocko, and then Jocko again, I think, and then Darren, all you guys for the first five of you for who may have received your Ingebretson Studio aprons by now, your Beauty and Truth aprons by now. I hope they went out a few days ago. I think they went out Friday maybe. So, but that was very much appreciated. Last minute sort of thing we did, and but again, you, Darren, thank you very much. I think I may have thanked you before, but I want to make sure that got in there. So, I think what I'm trying to do today, I'm going to talk about. I have two things I want to cover in the next couple of days. But the first one I think is going to be the start, and this one I have been putting together for my intensive class, and so I hope you all intensive people are watching this, and I'm going to create a presentation for you and give you my play. If you watched last week, my play, my theater, yeah, okay, some theater. If you paid attention last week, and I'm sorry, I per needs had to miss on Sunday, so he sent you out a Saturday night. He sent you out a message talking about the synoptic sort of summary statement called the start. I like this word synoptic. It's the idea of seeing the whole, and I'd never seen that before. I think I heard some preacher mentioning it, so it's synoptic gospels or some other thing. But the way the word was defined in the course of that conversation was I just knew fit us. So if you want to read that, you'll be up to speed. But let's just talk about. I just want to show you a lot of pictures of starts. And one of the things I want you to keep in mind is I'm not telling you that there is this or that righteous and pure and perfect way to make pictures. I tell you what we do, and what I found, best practices I've found associated with a lot of people, not just the Boston School. They're not all the same, all these guys. So I'm going to show you starts that include Soroya and Sargent as well. Not many of theirs, but mostly the Boston School. A couple of mine, a couple of my maybe a previous intensive or pastel class students from a previous workshop. But let me just move you through starts and just give you a chance to look at starts the way we think about it. And remember that what we're doing is we're talking about how the impressionist works. These aren't things; these are starts when the assumption is that you're going to lay in the picture in front of you just as you see it, more or less, and with trying to draw forth the beauty of that thing, to fully express that which attracted you, and with what you felt worthy of your time, and creating an image of it. So remember, it's an impressionist thing. And the model you already know is an all over the place at once in the start thing. Get the canvas covered as soon as you can. Paxton actually at one point said, get the canvas covered in a half hour. Hale said you can do that, but you're going to make a muddy mess on your canvas. So I'm trying to show you what we do and what a lot of other people do, but getting the canvas covered briefly, in a short period of time, until it reaches that point of being essentially there, having all the basic ingredients, and so you can say, yeah, it's already nice, and it's got the essential things I'm trying to do, and then bringing whatever levels of shall we say, elocution to it. The point about synoptic was that it was compared with writers who were trying to write a summary of their entire book, to sum up the book, and a lot of people don't. I may not have thought of that before, but that occurred to me when I was trying to, as I've mentioned, I think many times before, try not to be frustrated by being 30 days into a portrait, not being sure yet whether it's going to be a good portrait. Well, in the way we do this now, and this lay-in that I make now, I actually can tell whether it's going to be a good composition right away at the beginning, and whether it's going to be worthy of finishing. And what the essential magic is. And then everything else is a working up process, and you can do that to the nth degree of finish. I'm going to show you all that sort of stuff, or you can find that you have well executed that thing which attracted you and stop working. And but that's a fascinating place and a good discussion all by itself. So let's get on with pictures. You aren't here to you aren't here just to hear me talk, are you? And I'm going to get my Captain L ready here. See if I can get my laser thing going. Oops. I think I jumped too ahead. There's my first slide. And let me get my pointer. All right, there I have it. Look at that. Now, I start off with DeCamp because I'm afraid I'm a little bit of a he's my favorite among the Boston School guys. The guys I think of the Boston School, again, are the DeCamp, Benson, and Tarbell. And, of course, then there's the Paxton element. But he was a student somewhat of these guys, but he came in with a different kind of sort of an approach that is more incorporative of a full outline model, where these guys appear to have been painting, doing what we call painterly painting and more or less lost and found painting right from the beginning of their educations, early on at least. So, and if those words don't mean anything to you precisely, just go and look through previous videos. There's so much information already put out there. A lot of what I will be doing henceforth, going forward, I mean, if I've laid out the larger ideas, what I'm going to be doing going forward is narrowing down and expanding on certain points, what somebody would call unpacking these days, right? Unpacking certain very points where you can spend more time on that one idea. That's really what I'm doing with the start today, exclusively talking about starts. So I'm showing you. I'm gonna actually walk you through these without conversation, except the names of these artists, and then I'm going to take you back through from the beginning. Okay, not something I do every time, but this is a picture show, and I think we have about 11 presentations, basic slides here. So that's Joseph DeCamp, and the one on the right isn't a start per se. So I'm showing you two things: starts and something more close to what they do in the finish, so you know where they might be headed. These are Tarbells. These on the left is mine, and one on the right is Benson, and that one on the left is, I'm calling that a start, right? These are both charcoal, but I'm calling that a start. Now the Tarbell's more worked up, but it doesn't have this fineness of finish that someone else might do if they're going to make it into a fine portrait. It actually looks more like it's trying to be a study for a picture. I think I know this picture, by the way, so. And then there's on the this is Paxton, upper left, and then I'm showing you Paxton, lower left, more finished. You can see where you go from there to there. And I'll talk about that more. Tarbell up on the right, and the one on the bottom right is Sorolla. And then I'm showing you two finished areas with the start by Paxton, two finished pictures, sections of two finished pictures by Paxton with the start. Lay-in of a landscape by Tarbell. Should have shown you a fine one. I don't have that there. But then here on the left is a Benson. Upper two are a Benson more finished and a head more finished by Sargent. And the bottom right one is also a Sargent. So there's Benson and Sargent as starts, and Benson and Sargent as something more finished in an impressionist outdoor thing. Now this one on the left is Fisk, Gertrude Fisk, and the one on the right is Max Meldrum. Now, the one on the right I don't know if it's a start, so I'll talk about that later, but I'm treating it as a start because it's so essential. It's so big and not refined. And it is one version of a kind of a start a mass-oriented person would do. And then again, here we have on the upper DeCamp, middle Benson, right Tarbell, left bottom Sorolla, middle Sargent, bottom. Now this is just mine. Here's the start of a portrait in the upper right. The left was a demonstration. The bottom two are demonstrations. The one on the right for you, the self-portrait. I don't know why it's out of focus. I thought we took a focused one. And then the upper left one at the Guild of Boston Artists. These are hands. There's Velasquez up in the corner. And the hands of the two middle ones are hands by DeCamp. And I'm showing you them because you can see how you don't have to go really far past that initial lay-in, that sort of suggestive thing that Velasquez is doing there. And then the bottom right, to get to a finish. And then the bottom right is Tarbell from the Reverie at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And then these are students of mine. from a pastel class on the upper two, I believe, and or it's an intensive. I think it's a pastel class where I'm actually showing the visual order and trying to get people to articulate the way we do in a start. And these might be prolonged because what I'm trying to do is get you to get all the data I want into a start. And so they might go on for a day or more as they sort out. What I'm trying to do is get them to have a good model in their mind of what a good start looks like so they can aim at that. Once you know something like that, you can get there faster. You can take aim at it. You can see the tendency for the essentials. Okay, so let me run you back through to the beginning of this. Oops, I can't do it with that, can I? Let's just start talking from the beginning. So in the start, the essential thing that the thing we do is do the essentials, right? So you can see these faces are just basic blobs. For example, blobs of light with a form sense to them, right? This is basically that too, and it goes a little past that. But you can see there's no working up of fingers and little things. There's more working up down here, and I don't know, and that's just probably because he needed to plant certain things for design purposes or for drawing purposes rather. So one of the things we do as our kind of painter, we typically are designing in the rectangle. So we've decided what the rectangle is going to look like, and we design within it. But the start is always about the majors. So there'd be the big color masses, the lightest light, and the range. There's the next lightest mass, and then the range through to the next and down to the darks. The major form ideas, any major form ideas are out there. The order of intensity, the color scheme is all out there. So the start is full of stuff, and that's what gives you so little time to actually execute things. And so what you're seeing on the bottom edge here is you're seeing the drawing that matters, that silhouetting sharp edge. Not so much here, and then that silhouetting sharp edge and those key places. Those are key drawing places because they come to your eye easily and strongly. Again, one of the ways you have to get to the idea of what a start might contain is by learning to blur your eyes. And if you blur your eyes, you'll see there's a lot of things we don't have to draw well. My guess is that for him, except for the purpose of needing to set up this value to see what it's going to take to pop that light, to set up what white this is going to be able to be against what value the sky would have to be to get me that light effect, he might just leave this as a non-discussion because it's so minor compared to this and this and this, right? So these would be significant setup points visually because they're so strong. And one of the things you want to do by the end of the day is get the canvas covered. So if you have your strong things in the wrong places, that's bad. If you have weak things unexpressed, you'll survive. You'll survive that. Okay. But again, you could blur your eyes and look at the blue cup, and if you blur down enough, you can see the tendency of this whole area to be, if you blur down, is to see this whole dark coming through here and coming up here as a dark, and then popping up over here, maybe jumping over if you want to think of it as a dark. Now you can think of it as three different tones. There's a major light. I should say that one area of darks could be thought of as three. But if you blur your eye, the more you can unify those things in your mind, even if the dark is just coming out of a middle tone and easing into a dark, so you don't see any drawing over here, and then coming up as an even darker one over here, the unity of that way that all flows together is the kind of stuff you have to be kind of good at. But these are what our starts are made of, right? They're made of the major value units placed in the right place, the strongest of the visual order, and all the other animals, the color scheme, the major forms, the placement on the page, which makes up the composition. That sort of thing is what your thinking is all about, and that just goes on and on. You can see we've talked about these before. That in the Tarbell starts, we have a noisy tabletop today. Maybe that'll help. You can see in these though what he's done is he's gone to his salient light, powered up his major light in all cases. It's organized around the major effect of light, right? And everything else is dwindling down. So the power effect is here. He sets that up and he's spotting his way around. He's not looking for 1,000 different values. He's trying to keep the value schemes working together. This one here, he might very well have plowed right straight down and into this one, getting gradually darker and changing colors as it went. He might have done that before he ever put that line in there. because we want to see the grand unity of a picture. I'm going to talk about this in the next show, so I don't have to work on this too hard today. But I just want to see these values. What's so interesting about these starts is what they have and what they don't have. They have unity of all the minor stuff, and they have a powerhouse of a brilliant statement in terms of its light, its key edges and bits of drawing that set it up. So it's major effects, and then the exits, the things that are so important to the composition. Now the placement on the page would be huge in this as well, the center of interest areas. So all the drawing that's in here. So if you blur your eye a lot, all the drawing that's in here has to be right? It has to be pretty reasonably right. So this thing has to be placed well. So if you could avoid putting that in, but if you need it for something, but if you're going to put something in with any kind of strength, you really need to have done your math. It has to be in the right place to this, to whatever, right? So that's why you don't put in too many things in these kinds of starts. It's because you'll run out of time. And the idea of covering it in a half hour sort of sits in your mind. You don't really mean that necessarily, as I said, but the idea is right, that you want to say, how can I know on this first day, and fundamentalist my thinking, how can I know on this first day this is going to be worth it finishing? And it's the coolest thing, because this has now become the summary of what the painting is going to be. It's the essentials. It's the overview of the book. Now, it doesn't give you all the juiciness of the lovely eyelashes or beautiful hair turning this way, or I think in the right one, there's even going to be a cat in there. So there's an interesting point where he hasn't got around to the cat. But you understand that this is the synoptic. That's the synopsis. This is the large view of what's going to be there. And you can tell already this should be fun. These just need to be worked up. In other words, you see the plot, whatever it is about your book, you see the essential thing. And now it's just going to be a question of really doing fine work, really doing beautiful things within the areas. Okay. Which, by the way, in another conversation we'll have, or a little bit later today, we'll talk about what happens within the areas. Okay. So, again, these are just, I probably said enough about these already. But these are in the class of what I call starts, and you can see that how important, how much weight there is visually in places like this or this kind of stuff here. It's actually visually strong, this kind of thing. It's visually strong, and therefore it's well placed, it's well worked on. And lesser things, like there might be some indications of things through here or in through here, but it's not careful. It's just adequate, okay? But you're trying to be quite precise in an area like this. Or in a spot like this, or in a place like this or this, where you're trying to actually locate your lowest, most readers, to establish a bottom, say. And you'd have enough stuff to form a top, but all that stuff is a whole different discussion. But yeah, so this is about, more than anything, it's trying to be about major forms, and they give you the sense of the major form, and then to have the bump count stuff within it. So we don't work by the planes, we do work by the egg, right? And Boston School guys are pretty much the same way. It's more of an Angian version of that idea. So here's the Paxton I talked about. The one on the right, upper right, and these are three nudes. Now you can see this one is done. This one appears just on the basis of the way some of this is drawn, and some of that stuff happens in the Sorolla here. These cutouts suggest there might actually be drawing under there, and we do have pictures of Sorolla. Standing there doing a painting of his wife, big canvas, life-size canvas looks like, and there he's got the thing fully drawn up with charcoal. I don't know that he did that in this one, but he could have. My perception is that these guys didn't do that. I don't know the degree to which marks were made by Paxton, though, and Paxton's definitely have more of a feeling of being cutouts of things. You can't understand that necessarily until you've done this, but than these guys do. These guys look like they're the Tarbells. They look like they're working in the world of the effect, like the effect play. So this picking up this over here and this over here picking up something, and like this or whatever. And these guys, these effect-based exits and all that sort of stuff. This is the way these guys work, and other things are treated as if they were about graceful losing, which is an expression I like to use. But this one is a close-up, so you can see where the face is going next. And so there's nothing inhibiting about this way of working. You're not left with this idea of loosey-goosey, poor modeling, or inarticulate modeling, or lacking finish when you need it, right? But like a passage like this right here, he wouldn't have laid that in at the beginning. And I think it was you, Darko, who was asking me about that idea of layers. But this is the first layer. And I probably should have put your name somewhere up there on the slide because you did ask something specifically about this. So you're worried about how do you do layers and how do you keep it wet up. We talked about retouch varnish. I think I sent you some sort of an email, but you do have to keep your colors fresh when you work this way. So there is a layer of something. Whenever something's dried in, you have to wet it up when you're about to work because otherwise your value relationships won't be true, and you'll be led down the wrong road, and you'll wind up with the next time you spray it, or if you varnish it at the very end, you'd wind up with things that didn't actually go together. You can see those in painting sometimes where the guy's got the middle of a hand painted, and all of a sudden there's this edgy joint there, and it's probably because that's probably what would have happened there. The guy didn't have the portion wet up when he painted this over into a wet on dry joint. To do this area here, he would have made a wet on dry joint sometime into the future. So Paxton would wet up these areas and execute further in this area. He would simply get the paint going, not wet up with oils, with oil, though you can do some of that. But he would have used the actual color notes, improved the color notes, and worked deeper into this area or any other area you're seeing. So an area like this looks like it's now been worked on longer than the other areas, certainly than areas like this. You can see the difference. So that's the next layer of execution that then happens for you. Yeah, I can't give you more information. I just wanted you to see about Sorolla. I just wanted you to see that he's also covering the whole canvas. And one of the things that we do is we execute more in the center of interest area than we do. You set it up so that it's all over the place. So everything is there. All the players are out there. And then the next phase of it is to go to that point of the greatest importance visually, one way or the other. And it could be an area like this, or more typically, it's an area like say this area right here, because it incorporates significant things that are going to have a lot of little but important stuff in them, like the face has. So an area like this might be the next area you work on. It's obvious he's gotten to this part before he's getting to this part. But there is a timing thing which would explain some of why he's here as something important about that visually. And in his case, frankly, being absolutely the center of interest area by the big smash of light here. And then your things dwindle away. So he's spent his next skin, you might say, where this guy would have done it here, this guy's doing it right here. And by the way, it doesn't mean he's painting on this the next day to get that. He could just have moved to that area after getting the thing blocked in like this, and then gone to that area as the part he wanted to lead the way all the way through to the end of the painting. That's a crucial thing. You have visual order. In other words, you have the order of the strength of things, and you have a certain amount of thoughtful drawing in all those places, the look of nature in all those places, but there's an area that is the dominant area in some visual way matters more than others. And that's the area where you really want to put things down and let it lead the rest of the events and keep it in front at all times. Conversations. So here I'm showing you how much you can take a finish like that, because that's precisely when I saw this with Gamel at the museum, I brought up the question of, so he was doing that to get to this kind of finish that you're seeing right here. Or down here, you can really see that articulately, right? I don't know if I'm blowing this up enough for you. Who asked about that? Was that you, Joseph? For a different video, but I did that in the other next video too. But look at this, and you'll see that, as I said, that level of articulation. There's no end to the level of articulation that you can go to. But the nice thing is if you let the center lead, so it would be this, where you'd spend the most time, you'd spend less time in other places, but you would actually not do it, meaning I'm going to just slough you off. You'd just say, get this right or nothing else goes right in the picture. And you get this right into this, which is the storyline of this picture, so to speak, but still contains the entire, the stuff that we're most likely to be intrigued by. We make those things work really well and make sure they're all right to the frame and in every other way right. And you do it in a form like this first, and then when it starts being time to push the painting in the next skins, you're going to be here first before you're in this little doll over here or before you're down in the hat down here, although you might have done certain parts of this hat with great articulation earlier on just to form placeholders to get to in this, just to get to here, and so on. So, you know what I mean, exits, the same old, okay? All right. I'm hoping I'm saying things that are meaningful to you, but there's no end to the kind of finish you can bring to these things, the kind of execution. But we do it in an orderly way. Wow, I just went dark, didn't I? Send the sun back out there, Mr. Producer.
A sun.
So I'll bring some sun. We'll just look at Tarbell for a second. Now, I've told you before that this is what I consider a start, and it is evidently a start down here. But again, this might be in that category where he either didn't have a sitter much and was going to put somebody in there eventually, but he put his time into this area here, right? But again, I'm just showing you a start. This is what our starts look like. They don't look like trees drawn with leaves stuck onto them. It has no photographic quality. It's impressionist qualities. What I mean to say is it's mass blobs. So you can see the great idea of the great fingers of dark coming down through here are well said, well articulated. This group of four things playing in some relationship to the other ones, the other darks. And the relationships, you can see the color relations, the color scheme. So it's the color relations of all the greens that play, the orange to brown things that are playing in the picture, et cetera, et cetera. You can see all that stuff is happening in the start. You want basically kind of everything in the start. So if you have a sense of texture in there, you want it to look like a broken up area, that light dark. You want a sense of texture, you want to keep that. When you have areas that are more flat, like the sky, entire sky itself, or this thing over here, say, you won't want to show texture. So you can see this is more textured, this is flatter. But the thing is, the big general impression contains, you can see this is a summary statement. It's going to be a really nice still life. And it contains everything except the final execution or the fine statements in small areas. So you can see this is going to get worked up. And this is probably going to get worked up soon. And get it, and he'll probably make an effort to get it ahead of the rest. I say ahead of it just for the purposes of that day. You never want anything to be ahead of everything. And if you're a really impressionist, you're trying to, everything is about the slice of like the moment in the sun. So it's all about the sun, so to speak, or the sun play, much more than it's about people and things. But this, you don't want this part to fall way back either. So this obviously is the part that's been least handled. So I'd expect him to go down there next. You could say to bring it into unity with this, and then you could say, or to bring it into unity and then turn this part at least into something more of a leader, which he's done here already. That's a pretty significant execution there. So I'm showing you now Benson and Sargent. And Sargent, by the way, is also not particularly planar. There are times, sometimes he looks more so, but he's got a sense more like the Boston School guys of turning around, of making a round more than making planes. I know that shows up differently at different times in Sargent's work, but it shows up really frequently. And I think I have in the next picture of a Sorolla, where you see him doing what appear to be a series of, well, I should do it this way, flat, 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 flat color masses. What we think of as planes. That is different in the Boston School lay-in from Tarbell. But you can see there's a certain similarity between these two pictures. This one looks like it's more articulate back here, and in this area, far less articulate. This has a certain amount of a quality of articulation, in my view, although you can see that he's pushed things and made sure he hasn't missed areas that might even look small because of their significance in the design. But nevertheless, I'll stop talking about that. Just look at them. You'll see, if you blur your eyes, see big. These are all, the picture is established. The summary statement's there in both cases, right? You see the beautiful interplay of the greens into blue greens or whatever. The interplay of these colors is exciting, and the counterplay of the beiges into beige into purple, that whole thing. But you can see that in the browns or whatever you want to call these things. Maybe you can call it an oranges in the sense of it's a primary field, right? I mean a secondary field, orange, purple, and green. But anyway, you can see that they're both summary statements, and then you'll see two executed heads, which shows you how he's going to take it next. And in both cases, you can see where they're going to take it. And these are the final versions of these things. You know this one as this woman who's painting with what would appear to be maybe her boyfriend at a fountain in Italy somewhere, maybe, or London. But you can see the difference between the non-execution of this head here, which is a big generalization for the purpose of letting him get through the entire painting. And you can see how a start by us is a summary statement, so it can't be about any. You can't get into really fine writing of fine paragraphs and searching out the right words when you're trying to get this big outline going on, this big summary statement. But then in the next event, and so probably this sort of thing here would come fairly soon. That would become there'd be the leadership of this area would be established by execution. In other words, you'd paint it more. You'd allow it to now become starting to be the leader, the dominant, the place that leads by most finish. So in that way, moving the picture forward, you move it forward from important places visually, so that the picture manages, despite the fact that you're actually moving it, you're moving. See, when it gets this unity, you see the big impression. You then have to move it to a new place. So how do you move it to that new place? You take that part that is that has inevitably the part you're maybe going to spend the most time with as a viewer. You may have to go to that spot and really work it up. So my guess is he would do this. What he's done to here, he would probably do here next and let this thing turn into a leader. But at that point, the picture will lose some of its unity. And the rest of the day, it'll be spent in bringing the rest of it, the execution, to that level in an order that actually makes sense. You'll have to sort that out. Again, you can see in both these pictures, the big impression is full of light, beautiful, without a lot of little details. This is fun just because without any significant details, you can tell that it's a party already. I mean, to say it's a party of spots. It's a color party. And so you see in both these cases, the sense of light. Now, I can't judge any of these pictures with these slides that come into these days. They all look like they're more brilliant than they could possibly be. I mean, especially this one. This is Max Meldrum, but this does show you how important the value at the very beginning, the color value is, and the relative contrast, places like this versus that versus, say, this, and the relative lostness of other places. These things are all significant in a start. So the start's big, the start's got the color scheme, and it's got the order of the effects. It's got the contrast right, and that's a right in relation to each other. Not simply in relation to nature, which is also one of those problems, right? But you see what these are. And again, when you're looking at these things, blow your eyes. So you could actually see this whole thing could almost be said to be one big value with a sort of a darker middle value sitting here and a few other spotted middle values around here and up here, and then dark spots, right? That would be a summary description of this thing. And like the other one I described as you know, the Sargent's as a triad of colors. You can do the same thing with these guys and sum it up in your mind, sum it up in your. It's better off, you know, when you're standing out there to try to grasp the underlying unity of it, try to grasp the thing, get a concept of the thing as a whole, and what it is essentially as a color scheme. That's it with its big ramifications. So yeah. So this is called major masses and big impression and big look and those sorts of things. Now, down the bottom left here is the Sorolla that I was talking about. You can see it has a little bit of a feeling of planar. It also has it has bits and pieces of drawing, so I can't tell where this is, but the planar is the one thing I wanted you to see. And you can see that all the other guys here are painting from the round head rather than the planar head. Now you could say, well, it's just the light of that circumstance as well. You could say that, but I see enough of this with Sorolla to think that he's doing something else. And those are the two kind of schools that are out there when it comes to mass painting. That argument was being had by Ang, who cursed the planar, the guys. And you know, if you're talking about the Barg method, you may be talking about something that suggests the planar and other guys as well. And so I better get out of this. But anyway, you can see that. But the general impression is if there's great forms, we want the great forms to show. And that's true of virtually everybody. So notice the major values, the major light, the next value light, and its relationship to this one, and the next one, and the next one. So basically, as Sargent would say, you're blurring your eyes. You see a 5-value system with this grand unity of the lights, of the light into the middle tone, featuring that dark, and this middle tone thing here featuring this light, as it were. But that's a summary statement of I'm trying to find ways of saying summary to you. You can see in Sargent's case here, and this does appear to be a very early, if not, this has to be just a first day lay-in, where he's just basically got this one big color value here, getting slightly lighter as it goes down and changing colors through from greener to pinker to the somehow more golden, with its blue elements scattered or whatever, and this major mass back here without a whole lot of thinking going on, and then the dominant thing is the big impression. The dominant thing is that in the upper portion of this thing, these lights get featured up here, and in this bottom portion, the light here gets featured. I'm not saying that well. I'm not saying that. That's not a very good way of saying that. Um, but anyway, when you're up in this area, you get action through the dark spots and the light spots, and that's your area of greatest interest. And you express that in a lay-in. You say, and this is the power place. It's the same as this area over here. This area over here it's shown to, it's powered up, and everything else is set up in order of diminishing importance and worked on less because of that order. Anyway, you can see that these starts have in common, though, is that they have major, oh, by the way, the hair here is where you can see the planar qualities, right? Whereas you can see that in other guys, there's much more of a sense of the egg and then the highlight on the egg or whatever, a roundy. Okay, I think there's more to say about those. So these are the ones I did for demonstrations. And you can see that the idea is for me to isolate. This is a great middle tone picture with an orange side to it and a cool side over here, and then a bunch of middle tone to dark things spotted around with lights powered up and featured into them. And that's, if you can say those things essentially and have the order of the edges reasonably good, so this thing to whatever is happening over here, if you can have the order of the edges well said, and the order of the effects, as well as the order of the major value units. And I go out of my way, by the way, if these values are basically the same, I keep them the same until they don't look right as the same. Then I can adjust them a little bit. But they're chairs and arms and legs, so I'm looking for feature places, things that will help me. So I'm spotting. This is called sending out scouts. There's a piece of a leg that I can read that silhouette there and easily locate it in relation to, say, this, or lining it up with something over here. So those are the kinds of things we do, but we make them look like themselves. So that's our kind of a start. But these are what the starts look like. In just a portrait head, I'm doing the same thing as you see all the other guys doing. I'm doing basically an egg. You can call this thing a big inverted drip, but I have this sense of form that's grand and not small. It's not a count of form. It's not noodling from the inside out or from parts or from the top down. It's setting up the big egg and the major spot of dark in it, the busyness the area has. The greatest busyness is right here, and that has to be there for me to be able to tell whether I'm going to have a good design by the end of the day. And of course, all the effects have to be right in relation to each other. So, but yeah, you can see if you blur your eye, this is a big dark green to purple movement, or green to purple, powered up by a light up right up the middle. So keep thinking that we're trying to get to a summary statement, but we have to be very precise right here where the exit is. And we have to be precise enough in other places to locate the head in the right place, right? So this blob has to be in the right place for our design. And so it goes. But I want to get to the point where I can actually see the design and like it by the time I get done with the first day. And so I need enough information. It has to be true enough and yet not fine, right? So I have to get this to actually be a light effect. I want to be able to see the color scheme. I want to be able to see the value scheme. So that's based for me on effects on major value masses. And so there's this really dark one here. There's this middle dark one here. And then there's the next value up, and then there's the lightest lights. The next value up might very well be part of this one. Looks like it is. And then the lightest lights, which are featured right in this area here. Isn't that nice? So again, I'm not looking to be simplistic. It's just that when you're seeing a note like this, you want to look around and see what it's part of, what it's with, who it's like. You'll then see yourself connecting it valuistically right through this area here. This part just comes wobbling through here, maybe even picking up over further. And the same thing with this value here. So you can see it sort of picking up down here or spotting over and whatever. But yeah, I'm hoping you see what a summary start looks like. So these are my student. Oh no, so let me show you these hands. So a start of a hand. See how precise he is right here with the light effect and that feeling of form. And then he's very precise here where the next powerhouse is, right? And other things are less so. It looks like the shape making is adequate. The edge making looks like it's more turned here, less turned here, sharpest say here, most effective here, contrast greatest here, and all those things. So you can see that he's doing that, but he's not executing like this yet, right? In other parts of this painting, you can see him doing that more so. In this area, you might even say it feels like he's pushed it a little bit more so. But this is like a next level. This is DeCamp. This is like a next level where he's going to become even more precise with those things that he finds the greatest leadership in. But this area here is a nice example of what you're basically seeing here. But wherever you have light, wherever you have these things in a start, you actually don't want to put them down muddy and wrong. You don't want to just do drawing. You want to do your effects. Don't bother putting them in unless you can actually get the effect. So if you're working on something before it's time, you'll lose your day. And that's what you can't do. So you make sure you're only talking about majors. So this whole thing is a big blob. And if you look at your eye of orange in the middle of a dark world, and you find the locations of key things, and before you know it, you can set the whole thing. Great movement, a rounded movement of values coming through here. Big simples, right? Big simple, big middle tone sweeping through into light, and then powered up by a few reading players. That is what we call a summary statement. Okay, and that's what that start looks like. This one's by Tarbell. You can see it's basically just broad masses of tone with a little bit of a hint of a little action here and there, powered up by the strong guys that matter. This guy, this guy, this guy over here, right? If you're just talking about this thing as a blob. But those guys are the ones you got to make sure you have in the right place and doing the right thing by effect. And while in the meantime, the whole major color mass has to be right as value and as color, and whatever form content it has in large, you're going to put that in and start. You wouldn't make it a flat cutout. So here are my students doing just exactly that. And I have spent enough of your time on these. I didn't think it would take this long. That first walkthrough, I guess. But you can see the visual order of effects and the search for composition in the midst of I just make these still life messes for people to work on in the studio, in these workshops that I do. But you can see there's a search over here. There's a big blob. There's a search for the leading effect over here. And there's not a search to make up these flowers, but there's great work here. So you can see if you blur your eyes down, you'll see that this person has worked well on this area, on certain areas here, this. You can see where they put the time in, and these are significant areas in terms of setting up the composition and setting up the effects, setting up the order of things, visual. So these are 3 different painters doing these things, and I'm just showing you how big you can be. These guys probably didn't take 2 minutes to do these things, or a half hour, okay? So, and I give people more time to try to do a good start than just one shot. But we do a lot of that work on one shot early on. All right, well, that's it. I'm showing you what starts look like, the way we work. And you'd have to look up other starts by other people to see how other people look in the first day, in the first hour of the first day, right? I didn't show you the first hour of these, but I have at other times. So if you look around, you'll find those too. Although the one earlier, when I was showing you my own stuff here, see, these demonstrations are usually no more than an hour and a half long. So I'm doing very well to cover the canvas. When somebody said, is it more difficult, or how do you do this? Does this even work in a complicated world? Well, this world is full of chairs and stuff. I don't remember how many, maybe 3 chairs were sitting here. So me getting the canvas covered in a harmless way, so that I know I can put darks over midtones over lights, I can easily plow those in if I run out of time. But I do want to be able to tell if my big compositional idea is working. I won't be able to swear it's working until I have the busyness, but I know the busyness here is going to be stronger than the busyness is here, so I know that I can sense that I'm going to be fine over here. But this is established because it was doing powerful things over here and so on. But you can see this is an earlier phase, a truly earlier phase. It doesn't show you a bunch of white canvas, but if you look at the one I did, the video on the nude, that shows you that early phase where you see a lot of white canvas. You can see step by step by step by step, which I did for you guys. All right. Well, thank you all again for your lovely gifts this time, and I hope you enjoy your presents back, and I hope they get there. And I will see you in the next one. All right. Good painting.